Hi, Charles County. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Get Fiscal, a chance for us to share all sorts of news, information, and education about things related to budget and finance here in Charles County. We're joined again, as always, by the wonderful Jake Dyer of our Fiscal and Administrative Services. Jake, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And also joining us today, because the episode today is going to talk about equity in the budget, something I'm excited about, is Renesha Miles, our Chief Equity Officer. Thanks for being here, Renesha.
Thank you for having me.
This is going to be fun because I feel like we've got such an interesting balance of Jake, the expert of all things finance, Renesha, the expert in all things making sure that we are as equitable and inclusive in Charles County government as possible. So I think this is going to be an interesting mix of topics that don't always go together. Like, how does budget and equity tie in? So, Jake, can you start by kind of answering that question? How did we decide in Charles County government that we wanted to have a focus on equity when we look at our budget?
Yeah, so the focus on equity probably began about 5 or 6 years ago, and it's not just a Charles County phenomenon. It's kind of, I would say, it's a regional and across the country where government organizations have been looking at ways to improve diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout their organization. So we started that process. We have the Chief Equity Officer position that got approved. I believe, Renesha, we were one of the first counties in Maryland that actually started that position in the area. So with the position, with the expertise of the Chief Equity Officer, we decided to use her to our advantage to help us determine budget requests or anything that's finance related that could look at certain requests from the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which would allow us to make smarter decisions throughout the budget process when we're analyzing requests of what we should fund or what should maybe wait for another year or two, because all requests that we get from department and agencies all are worthwhile or meaningful, but is anything we can do to improve our diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout the county, that becomes a higher priority when it comes to requests.
So kind of adding in one extra component that when somebody comes in with that budget request, it's all the normal questions, all the typical stuff, and also, does this tie into our equity goals? Did I say that accurately?
Yeah, and it makes us smarter.
Excellent. Makes us smarter, makes us more equitable.
Correct.
Yeah. So Renesha, this is just one component of your job. Can you give an overview of kind of all that you do, and then also talk about the budget component of it?
Sure. I mean, you alluded to it. So ultimately, I'm responsible for making sure that we are considering equity in all the things that we do in Charles County government. So what that means is just making sure that we are taking that extra step to analyze and really think before we make decisions about how they might impact the people that we are directly serving. So ensuring that when you have a positive intent, that the positive impact also matches when all of the things are decided and the actions are taken and the rules are put in place and all of those things. So related to the budget, as Jake said, just trying to make smarter decisions, because yes, everything that the departments or the staff bring forth in terms of budget requests are important and potentially essential to their operations and all of that, but this takes another look at it to see, is this something that we have to do right now? Is this something that is going to have a potential positive impact on the community overall, or is it going to have a negative impact if we don't do it? So like really understanding that and looking at who it's going to impact and how often we are impacting certain pockets of the community. So if we are unintentionally funding or budgeting things that seem to keep hitting the same pocket or area, that we're now taking that look and like, oh my goodness, we have continued to fund, say, this project over the last couple of years, and that's been great for that area and that's been great for that thing, but there's a whole other group or other set of things over here that we might want to consider moving forward. So again, encouraging the staff to understand that and just take that extra step to analyze things according to equity, and they have a specific tool that we have worked over the last couple of years to put together to help guide the staff when they make their budget requests. We're offering training. Jake was part of a group that actually went through some specialized training last year to be prepared to do this and help, craft the budget equity tool. So, I mean, honestly, it is nothing outside of really common sense. It's just, just taking that extra step back and that, I guess, higher level look at it
Well,
when you're doing it.
It sounds like it's the best practice, but it's the best practice with intention.
Exactly.
So it's not just like we hope we remember to do this. It's we are actually intentionally making sure. So the specialized training you're referring to was the Government Alliance on Racial Equity.
Correct.
So I wanted to do a special shout out because I know Charles County is really good about attending some of these DC area-based government alliance, the GARE trainings, and I got to participate in one. And I think the most amazing thing is that you're talking to other people doing similar work around the area. So it's not reinventing the wheel. So a special shout out to GARE because they do such a great job of giving us the opportunity to kind of learn best practices from other places and also talk about what Charles County is doing well.
Exactly.
All right, so we talked about this tool that was created. I'm going to ask you to tell a little bit about how that tool works, what it looks like, and then I'd love to hear some of and even if you don't want to get kind of deep into it, what are some things or decisions we've made that have either been made because of the equity tool or have not been made, like something that we didn't fund.
Okay.
So if you can think about some examples. So tell us about this tool that's getting used. How does it work?
Okay, so basically the tool is a set of questions designed to help the staff directly consider the impact of whatever the request is that they're making on the community at large. So really making that decision about, like I said, whether if we don't fund this thing, oh my goodness, this or this could potentially happen.
Okay.
But if we do fund this thing, these are the positive outcomes or
so
actions
pros and
that could
cons
happen.
kind of measured out.
Exactly.
If we don't, this would happen.
Right.
If we do, this would happen.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I mean, sometimes when there are budget requests, again, as Jake had said, there are things that, need to happen like right now. And I don't believe that any of the staff are putting forth budget requests or items, again, that aren't deemed essential in their opinion to what they do. Like, we're not just asking for things just to ask for them.
Right.
There is a reason and a rhyme, for why we're doing these things. Again, because we do not have just an unlimited pot of money, we have to be good stewards of the money that we have, so we have to also be strategic. So this is about that strategy, and again, making sure that our positive intent matches with positive impact when all of the things roll out. So it really is a specific questionnaire. There are 4 questions that are outlined in the budget equity tool. It's making sure that things are positively aligning with our current goals and objectives that we have before us. It's also about understanding the need of the community, and so doing some work or thinking and thought about, okay, I have heard that this is something that folks in this area are requesting or requiring, and this is how we can meet that need. It's also about understanding all the definitions that are associated with our diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And again, making sure that when we are making decisions overall, that we're spreading the love, if you will, in terms of the positive impact and outcomes that can happen. One of the questions does ask, how can this request positively impact the community overall, like not just one? Are you looking at something that, might initially start to have, like, say it's a road repair or something like that? So obviously that's going to be great for the people that live on that road,
right.
But it's also going to be great for all the other people that travel this road for X, Y, or Z reason. So you want those positive impacts to really be across the board, not just isolated to one individual area, individual person, or group of people.
That makes sense. So talk a little bit about some decisions that have been made using this tool. And then, Jake, I'd love to hear, we always talk in these episodes, you've been doing this job for how long?
I've been here since 2002.
That the way that the county has changed since 2002, the way that what we know about equity has changed since, we've come a long way in the world. We've come a long way in Charles County. I'd love to hear, after we talk about some of these decisions, kind of how this has impacted your education, knowledge, thoughts as this budget expert for us. So what are some of the decisions that have been impacted by this tool? Can you give some examples of times when we've said, like, to use, Renesha, your language, I love the phrase that you used as the intent match the impact. Mm-hmm. What are some times where we realized the intent did or did not match the impact?
Okay. Jake, do you have an example?
Well, I can think of one that's all the top of my head. One was a couple years ago, we decided to no longer charge a fare fee for our Van Gogh riders. We looked at it from an equity point of view, is that the individuals that need the rides to get to their job or get to where they need to go, it was more equitable just to no longer charge the fare. So we're still doing that fare-free promotion to incentivize individuals to get to their jobs or get to wherever they need to be. And we were only charging, I think, $1 or $2 for a ride. And then when you weigh in the fact that we had to collect that dollar, and sometimes the struggle they would do to get that dollar, and then the lock boxes that we would have to maintain and so forth, it was really decided that we would be better off to incentivize decrease the ridership back actually post-COVID,
right,
was to make a fare-free promotion that we've been continuing since the Vango ridership has started back up since COVID.
And I love that when you describe that, it does have, I think sometimes we want to kind of take the low-hanging fruit of like, we're going to be good people. We're now fare-free because it's the good thing to do. And there's truth in that. But also we're going to be fare-free because, like you said, that's going to end up saving Charles County revenue because we don't have to invest in the lock boxes because we're not. And the important thing is we want people. So it really is this nice, well-rounded decision from what I hear you saying, that it's looking at every side of should we make this decision or not.
Right. Plus, we were also trying to incentivize for students that need to go to college in Southern Maryland, the ones that want to better their education, we can now provide them a ride to the college for them to take their classes. That's another angle that we had when we were debating, because it was an impact on the budget because we did get revenue for it, but it was decided that at the end of the day, we were better off by allowing our riders to ride without paying.
I appreciate that it's a little thing with a lot of components, and in the end, the decision's made not just off of dollar and cents, but off of what's best for our community.
Right,
that's wonderful. Yeah.
Another example is when we're looking at it from our career EMT point of view. We're looking at where can we provide a career unit at. So we look at it from an equity standpoint of where the best place is. Because we know in Waldorf and La Plata is your high density areas, but what areas of Charles County really need to have a dedicated paid crew?
So Jake, tell us a little bit about how has your mindset changed? What have you learned from this?
One, I'm always learning, and my mindset is still evolving on this. Because as you said, I've been here since 2002. So for the first 15 to 17 years of my career here, my mindset was one way, and now we're working on retraining my brain to look at it from a new perspective, which is great. It's always good to keep learning and improving to evolve as as society evolves, right? Yes. So as you kind of minute in the fall, I did attend specialized gear training to look at things from budgetary. It was a budget officer focus equity training. It was really cool because that training included a lot of your Northern Virginia counties who have been down this equity road for 20 years now. So they're much farther evolved. That's something to strive for.
Right.
It's a process, but what's allowing me is to look at those requests to see what maybe in the past, maybe there were some requests that I probably would have not considered to make a case for. Now I'm making cases for them. I'll give you another example. A couple years ago, we had a request to replace copiers, and that area would charge 25 cents a copy for that. And the group that they focused on were probably some of your citizens that it was probably a burden for them. So it was disincentivizing them from using that operation. When they put the request in, we were like, we're not going to give you additional funds. We'll give you the funds for the copier,
right?
But we don't want you to put the machine on there to charge them. So that's one example where we kind of looked at a request and didn't really give them what they were asking for from an equity lens. Because like I said, we're still evolving and we're realizing there's a lot of there's things out there that we do that might hurt a certain segment of our population, and now we're mindful of that when we're going to request. But we're also mindful of things that we can do to improve our areas and budget requests that we can add and so forth.
That makes sense. Yeah. And I think, I always think about the Maya Angelou quote that's something to the effect of do the best you can till you can do better, and then you need to do better. Right. And I appreciate that we're learning to do better, that for a long time we probably didn't think about that for some people not having access to being able to print things at a either free or reasonable cost really did impact their ability. Kind of like what you said about fare free. Like,
Right.
can I get to my job? Do I need to worry about? And now seeing that more well-rounded perspective, we're doing better. So I think
Right.
that's awesome.
It's a work in progress.
It's a work in
Yes,
progress, but we're working, and I
Yes.
appreciate that. Like I think you both know me well enough to know that sometimes I don't slow down, and so it's a good reminder of like, it's okay to slow down and do things the right way. We're still moving. We're still moving. So.
Which is why we have that equity tool that we're working with Renesha.
Yeah.
So the process on this is we get the department's submissions. It's due to us in December.
Okay.
And then we ask them to look at, and we don't ask them to provide an equity tool for every single one of their requests because we don't want it to be an exercise in futility.
Okay.
So we ask them to fill out for their top 3 requests, their top 3 priorities. We ask them to fill out this equity tool.
Okay.
And so forth. But we're mindful that we could always come back to them and say, hey, that priority number 5 or 6, we think that actually has a equity focus.
Right.
Please fill out that form because it could. That might need to be a higher goal for the county.
That form in some ways would allow us to push something a little more prioritized,
elevate it.
elevate it. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay,
So,
gotcha.
so that's, and we're still learning. Our departments and agencies, this is new to them as well.
Right.
So every year, I know we're striving to make improvements on the justifications and the answers because they're learning as well. And I just feel as though each year, as we move through the budget process, we're just going to get better and better and better on ways to improve our overall equity throughout the county.
I love it. All right, so Renesha, goals. What's you've kind of made it this far. We're now using a tool,
Right.
which is amazing. What's next?
Ultimate goal is just, as you said, to continue to do better, to continue to improve, to make sure that we're being intentional and that we're conscious about the things that we're doing, and that ultimately the outcomes are positive for our entire community and our workforce. So, budget requests impact the outer community and they also impact our internal, because also on your budget requests are things like the positions you need in your department to be successful. And a good example of using the equity tool related to that is really taking a look like, what will the impact be on our ability to perform our service if we do or we do not get this additional position? So that's very important. So as Jake said, it's a constant learning process. It's still new for a lot of our staff and our departments. And I hope that we continue to learn and improve and just get better and better because we want to do more and we want to do better for our community. So that really is my ultimate goal for all things equity, is that we just keep improving.
I do want to tag on because she made a good point, is when we do the equity lens, we're also looking at it to make sure we don't create any equities within departments.
Yes.
Right. I heard you say that, the internal piece too.
So,
Yeah.
for example, my department, Fiscal Administrative Services, we're not a customer service outside the work. We're providing customer support within the organization.
Right.
So we look at it from that perspective, like if something happens, how can we, from an equity lens, provide any services to the to make them better, to providing direct service. So there's also we're looking at it from that perspective as well. So how we provide service and equity to directly to our citizens and indirectly to our citizens.
No, I think that makes really good sense, including I do think that I want to open this by saying that I do think that Charles County government works really well internally together, but it is also a limited pot of money, and there is a feeling of, I need that money for my department. Look at the work my department's doing, and making sure that we're supporting each other and doing what's best so that county government can run. Because if county government runs well internally, county government runs well externally.
Correct.
So that's a great perspective that I hadn't really thought about before today, that it's equity out, but it's also equity within.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anything else, budget and equity, that you guys want to touch on in today's episode?
As we always do through the budget process, equity is embedded in our process. We actually will, in our budget presentation to the commissioners in April, Renesha is part of it. She does have a part of the presentation to explain her process, and that so she can explain any request and so forth that we have embedded the equity into the process. So she is part of the overall presentation.
That's awesome.
And she does a great job of going through this.
Thank you.
And so,
I appreciate it's. I always love when two things that don't always seem like they go together end up working together really well. So, I laugh, Jake. If there was a list of jobs I don't want in county government, yours is really high on my list. A job I do not want. And Renesha, I am in the job that you used to fill. So you and I align much more closely in like how we think and the work we do. And so it makes me feel really good to know that something budget, which feels, very numbers, very kind of cold and methodical, and DEI work, which is kind of the opposite, right? Very much more humanistic. But when the two come together, they actually do work very, very, very well together, and both benefit from the other. If it was all the touchy-feely DEI humanistic, we wouldn't have the good financial aspects. And if it was all just looking at the money, we wouldn't think about things like the fair, free. And so I love it when the two come together.
Absolutely.
It makes me feel good to be in the room with you guys.
That is really part of the charge, too, for the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, helping all of our departments understand how this mindset or how this lens relates to what they do. And as you said, Jake, in the budget area, very numbers driven, a different part of your mind that you're using for that stuff. So for us to successfully be able to merge the two is really a positive thing. And I feel like Jake has really done, and his staff, done the work to develop that understanding. And I mean, going to the specialized training, collaborating with me in the office on a regular basis so that, okay, yes, this makes sense. I understand, what we're supposed to be doing when it comes to this kind of thing. And then it becomes just natural, as you said, embedded. And that's the whole goal, that it's not something that we kind of just throw on the back end or throw on the top, that it's included all the way throughout, and that you're just doing it without even realizing it. I love to watch presentations, which I do regularly, and just kind of hear those equity elements in it without people specifically saying it or pulling it out or naming it. I'm like, oop, they considered that. Yeah. Job well done. Yeah, we got it. So.
That's the ultimate goal, right? Is this to, for any of our budget discussion, really organization-wide, as Renesha said, is that it's just natural to us. And it's still a work in progress. We're still striving to get better, and I think we'll get there. It just takes time.
It takes time, but it also takes intent, and it takes desire to do better, and that's what I hear both of you saying today. Yes, willing partners and a commitment to doing it. So.
And I've never felt like Jake or the Department of Fiscal Administrative Services were like, oh, no, I can't. I don't think that really, right? Like that doesn't match here. It's always been, okay, yes, tell me more. Like, all right, what are the definitions? Okay, what exactly are we trying to achieve here? How can we? And then they give me back information that helps me understand where they're coming from and how they're trying to approach it. So, I mean, it really is a collaborative process, but we want it to be natural. We want it to be normal, and it's going to take time for that to happen. And quite honestly, a lot of things have been happening organically and naturally without it actually having the tag of a DEI initiative on it. Like I say that to people all the time. I'm just asking you to do probably what you've been doing, which is just be a fair and decent decision-making person. You know what I mean? To make sure that what we are doing is doing good for the people in the community, internally and externally. I just put a little fancy acronym on it recently, like, okay, or we have, system-wide and nationwide. Like, this has been something that we're focusing on. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for being here today and talking about this really wonderful and unique collaboration. I say unique, maybe getting to be more and more common in our world, but I think something still beautiful for Charles County. So thanks for talking about budget and equity tied in together. Jake Dyer from our Fiscal Administrative Services and Renesha Miles, our Chief Equity Officer for Charles County Government. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. We hope you enjoyed learning about budget and equity and hearing a little bit about the budget process in general. You can always go back to our other episodes to learn more. And of course, you got to hear how Jake and I think about future episodes and come up with ideas for future shows. So we hope you'll go back and listen and tune forward and listen as we have more episodes coming up in future months. Thanks so much, Charles County. Take care, stay safe, and stay engaged. For more information on Charles County government, visit our website, www.charlescountymd.gov. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter and subscribe to the county's e-news. Also, don't forget to sign up for our text and email alerts through the Citizen Notification System. You can watch CCG TV on Comcast Channel 95 or Verizon Fios 10, and we're streaming on Apple TV and Roku devices. Just search Charles County Government. You can also subscribe to our podcast wherever you get your podcasts by searching Charles County Government.
And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel